I realized it would reduce my risk of my cancer coming back, that this was something I had to do.
Welcome to Survivor's Corner, brought to you by Patient's Voice, where we hear the stories of critical illness survivors and dive into the major takeaways they've learned throughout their journey, which has helped them on their road to recovery. I'd like to introduce my next guest with the foreword from her book, Unleash Your God-Given Healing, 8 Steps to Prevent and Survive Cancer. I'm honoured to write the foreword for Ginny Brant's book about accepting the challenge of a cancer diagnosis and taking dedicated steps to beat it. A cancer diagnosis is devastating news for any person. It is for most people something that happens to someone else. The moment a person receives the news, immediately it causes a cascade of immunosuppressive emotions such as fear, anxiety, stress, anger, and denial. The person's first thought is often, am I going to die? What about my family, my job, my dreams? This book is the result of one woman's cancer journey, through courage, faith in God, and being proactive in battling the disease. Ginny survived this difficult journey. She did it by seeking out and taking the necessary steps to achieve victory. Now she has been called by God to share these steps with other cancer victims to help them navigate the ups and downs and twists and turns of this journey. These steps also help anyone who desires to prevent cancer. In these pages, you will read something of Ginny's personal cancer story, including the initial shock, the ensuing fear, the difficult medical decisions, her treatment plan, and how it all impacted her. But keep in mind that this was her journey, and your journey is only yours. Each cancer is different and unique to each individual. With breast cancer, even the same cell type may have a different tumor biology, stage, and genetic mutation. Your journey may be similar and yet totally unique to you. Your main goal is to achieve complete remission. Ginny has provided you with a tremendous roadmap involving 8 powerful steps to help you reach that destination. I like all of these steps, but I ask that you give special attention to those involving hydration, rest, exercise, using food as medicine, relying on your faith to manage stress, and healing the gut. As you read this book, be strengthened and encouraged. Don't get lost in the details of the science, but stay focused on what applies to you. Hear and receive the core message of each step without putting undue pressure on yourself to completely implement every suggestion. Do not feel guilty if you cannot follow each step totally, but commit yourself to the discipline. Keep a positive attitude and engage in daily prayer. If you are diligent in implementing these 8 steps to the best of your ability, they will help you to unleash the God-given healing within you. God bless. So today we have Mrs. Ginny Brant, who's a breast cancer survivor, author, and wellness advocate and Christian. So it's an honor to have you with us today.
Thank you. And that introduction was written by Dr. Robert Elliott, who was both a cancer surgeon and an oncologist, a 55-year veteran in the cancer journey who had actually invented cancer vaccines and had a 100-page vita. Quite a wonderful man who mentored me in the process and came behind me when he found out what I was trying to do with this book.
So we'd like to start with your background, just so the viewers can get to know who you are. You mentioned about growing up in the corridors of power in Washington, D.C. Could you unpack that life before your diagnosis?
Yes. As a teenager and as a child, I did grow up in Washington, D.C. In my early years, my dad served a senator for 12 years. So I was always in the Capitol and in the Senate office building. And then during high school and beyond, he served 3 presidents. And so we were constantly in and out of the White House. And so going through difficult trials was something I learned at age 16, which was 6 months after I had just become a Christian. And I was the first Christian in my family. My parents brought me up to go to church, but our church was nothing more than good works. We rarely opened the Bible. And it was about, supporting other people and good works. And we really didn't understand what Christianity was all about. I was the first one in my family to be able to sit under the mentoring of some very wonderful Christian people who taught me what Christianity was about. And then when I gave my life to Christ at age 16, I began a journey of just evaluating everything in my life and looking at what I could do in the kingdom of God. And so I went from a modeling career and on my way to New York City to be a model to seeking God's will for my life. Now, unfortunately, Andre, some tough trials came just 6 months after I had given my life to Christ. My mother was diagnosed with severe depression and hospitalized. And my father, as one of the president's men, that president he worked under at the time was Richard Nixon, and we all associate him with Watergate. And so being the top political advisor to the president when Watergate hit, we were caught up in the Watergate trials for several years. And whether I realized this was coming, and certainly unintended by my parents with her depression as well, it left me at age 16 to help raise my younger brother and to completely manage the home front while my father went through this horrific trial. And so I learned at age 16 that the first thing you do when you have a trial is you go to God in prayer and you stay in his word. And so, and I also learned how powerful prayer can be, because I'll just tell you in a nutshell, I prayed for my dad. And as we're going through the Watergate trials, he prepares me that when the president and his men, since everyone's gone down, that he's going to be the next person to go to prison. And he prepared me to handle everything at home, including raising my younger brother. And I kept saying, Dad, we're going to pray about this. If you are innocent, I believe God will prove you to be right. And I kept praying. And what God did, it was clearly something I had no control over. He took us through that trial. He gave me the strength. He gave me wisdom. And he completely turned my family around. Yes, it's true. My father was only one of 65 who did not go to prison in the Watergate trials. My mother was healed of her depression. And my parents, through my young found faith, began to see that God was more powerful than they thought he was, and they needed to get on mission with him. They ended up surrendering their lives to Christ and going into full-time ministry for nearly 25 years. So the reason I'm telling you this is, from this crisis, I learned that God could be trusted when we're in a trial. And so when I got the cancer diagnosis, the first words of it's cancer, it was 4 months after my mother had passed from breast cancer. And we were already reeling from that. And then the next thing was, oh, it's aggressive. Well, no cancer patient wants to hear that. And then when the doctor told me after looking at the MRI that it was worse than they thought, I'm thinking, how much worse can it get? And that's when they said, it looks like it's spread to your lymph nodes and other parts of your body, a stage 4 aggressive cancer. Well, that news was so shocking that I literally told him, I said, I don't believe you. You show me that MRI. So he took me back in his office. He flashed this MRI up on this larger than life screen, and it was horrifying to see that MRI. But that MRI let me know I needed to get a second opinion, because I looked at him and I said, I don't understand. I feel perfectly fine. How could this cancer be all over my body? But the first thing I did when I got the cancer, each time when I got the bad news, I went to God in prayer. I stayed in his word, and I knew that he could be trusted to get me through this trial. This would probably be the biggest trial of my life. And I also knew that whether I lived or whether I died, it was my mission in life to glorify him. So either way it went, I had had a wonderful life. I was a grateful child of God, that knowing that at age 16, my family could have been a statistic, yet God reached down and remade us and used us for his kingdom. And so even if this was my ticket to heaven, I knew that I would praise God as I went to heaven. So yes, I learned early in life how to handle trials from the Watergate trials, and that God could be trusted to help us
Amen.
to get through the trials of life, even if it means it's our ticket to heaven.
Wow, yeah, that's wonderful just to hear your faith was strengthened even through hearing daunting news. Something that you wrote in your book, you said, I felt trapped with no way out. I desperately longed to return to the days before the diagnosis. My mind refused to grasp what was happening to my body. I wanted to wake up from this nightmare. And you previously just touched on it, but I wanted to possibly unpack what you held on to through that time, whether it be scripture, like you said, if there's specific scripture, things that you might have memorized or something that you helped pull you through that initial stage. You mentioned going into the word prayer. Can you unpack that a little bit more?
Sure. It was horrifying news. And
Mm,
every night I would wake up and I would look at my husband and I would say, honey, is this just a bad dream? Because if it is, I really want to wake up from it. Hearing news like that, it's hard to grasp. And like I said in the book, I so desperately wanted to go back to my life
mm,
before I got that cancer diagnosis and wish I could have changed some things. And that's why a lot of my emphasis today is not just on surviving cancer, but preventing
mm,
it in the first place. Because once that doctor gives you that diagnosis, it's not a dream and you can't go back. You can only move forward. And how did I move forward? Like I said, the first thing my husband and I did was when I got home that day, my husband threw his arms around me and he laid his hands on me and he prayed for guidance and healing. There are so many decisions in the cancer journey. It's one decision after another and difficult decisions to make. And we desperately needed that guidance. And I desperately needed healing. And so he prayed over
mm,
me and we went for a walk to relieve the stress. Walking and exercise is one of my key ways that I've gotten through stressful times in life. And research will clearly show walking is one of the best things you can do to relieve stress. So, yes, I stayed in his word. I stayed in the power of prayer. And one day the Lord brought me to Philippians 4. And I was reading through the chapter, and here's Paul in prison. He's in the trial of his life, and he's telling his followers how to get through trials. So he's doing this from a prison cell. And we all know the words very well. I'm just going to paraphrase. He says in Philippians 4, starting in chapter 6, pray about everything. And then here's the
mm.
next part. You know what he says? Give thanks in everything. And I'm going, in the middle of a cancer journey, give thanks. Wow, that is powerful. And then he goes on in verses 6, 7, and 8, and he talks about dwell and meditate on the positive things around you, whatever is good, whatever is lovely. Think and meditate on these things. So this is what I took from that. Yes, we're going to pray about everything. I'm going to give thanks in this cancer journey. Now, how can I give thanks? Because, nobody wants to go through a cancer journey. I'm going to give thanks because I know that God's going to use it, as Romans 8:28 tells us, for his kingdom and for my good. And so whether I live or whether I die, he's going to use it for the kingdom. And then as I'm going through the journey with difficult decisions and lots of potholes and cancer therapies with many side effects, okay? As I'm doing this, I'm not to dwell on all that. If I've decided I'm going to take the treatment and it's the best thing for me to do to save my life, and I did have aggressive cancer, so I had made that decision, then I need to dwell on the good things when I'm going through chemotherapy. I don't need to dwell on every negative thing I can dwell on because the list of side effects was several pages long, including death, right? And so
Yeah.
I'm dwelling on the positive things while I'm having the chemotherapy rather than dealing on the negative things. And so that passage really got me through. Those words of wisdom from Paul really helped me to get through the cancer journey, because research will clearly show that if you're dwelling on the negative, and if you're on a roller coaster ride of fear and worry the entire time, you're probably not going to do too well in the cancer journey. The chances of you healing from the cancer journey and those chemicals working on your body and all that working to heal the cancer, it's not as likely to happen, because your mindset is important and it is powerful.
Well, with the treatment, so you mentioned how initially you opted to get a second opinion. After getting a second opinion, could you explain what treatment plan you chose to go ahead with?
Okay. Well, when we got that terrible, horrible, no good, very bad news that it was all over my body, an aggressive cancer, they told me they could only extend my life a few years if I did all the treatments. In other words, I was terminal. And so that just kind of forced me to, my husband looked at me and he said, we need to get a second opinion. I said, you're right. And so I ended up, I had been to National Religious Broadcasters Convention, and there was a booth there for Cancer Treatment Centers of America. And I remember seeing that, and for some reason, I called them first about that second opinion. And when I was talking with them on the phone and talking with their intake worker, who's still a good friend of mine now, we've developed a very close relationship, I found out that they had an integrative approach to fighting cancer. Integrative means they're going to use the best of chemo, surgery, and radiation, immunotherapy, everything conventional medicine has to offer, but they're also going to offer the best of research-backed, holistic medicine, meaning things such as vitamin C infusions, herbs, acupuncture, so many other things. And I've always, diet changes, what you eat, all these things. And so I've always believed in integrative medicine, and the fact that they would give me a second opinion with top-notch people, and if treated there, I would have an integrative and holistic approach. I was beginning to become very interested. So after going up there, they actually pulled that MRI up. And the first thing the intake doctor told me was, he said, I know this MRI is very concerning. It was concerning when I looked at it. He said, but don't jump off the bridge just yet. I'm not sure that actual diagnosis is 100% accurate. He said, we're going to have two surgeons, two radiologists look at this MRI, as well as order some more tests. And then by the end of the week, we'll get back with you with our recommendations. Well, they had to order another biopsy, because they did tell me the cancer had already planted another tumor. And so they had to biopsy that other tumor. And what was amazing was, with all the additional tests they did, I came in on a Monday. By Friday, they were able to tell me that it might not be stage 4. The diagnosis of HER2 aggressive and estrogen-fed cancer was true, but the stage, they said, we simply don't know at this point, because what we see on this MRI is not necessarily cancer. We believe it is inflammation from a biopsy that has gone bad, and it has spread inflammation all over your body. I think that was the best news that anyone could have told me, because it gave me hope that it might be stage 4. And so I ended up trusting them, their holistic approach, and that was the decision I made. I wanted that holistic and integrative approach, and they were going to give it to me. So to me, it was worth flying to Chicago to get that. And after my first surgery, Andre, the first thing I wanted when I woke up was to know how many lymph nodes were taken and was it in my lymph nodes. Well, they won't know until 48 hours. But when my surgeon was right by my bed and she said, only 2 lymph nodes taken, she said, it didn't look like cancer to me, but we won't, in the lymph system. She said, but we won't know until 48 hours. And the best news she could have given me was when she called me to tell me it was not in the lymph nodes. Yes, it was all through my breast. Yes, it was aggressive. Yes, I would receive the same treatment as someone who was in a stage 4 cancer. However, when I knew it wasn't in the lymph nodes, I knew that I had a much better chance of survival.
Yes. Okay. And so, yeah, from that, could really see the importance of getting a second opinion.
Absolutely. I recommend that
Yeah.
to so many people. It's not that everyone needs it, but cancer patients that call me for consults, I mean, I would say probably 60-70% of them need a second opinion. I mean, you really need to know if your cancer center is offering this, what is another cancer center offering? Is that cancer center or that other oncologist you're looking at, is that person up to date on the latest research? Because cancer treatments are changing, Andre, as we speak. What I got for an aggressive cancer, I'm talking to some patients that consult with me now, and they're getting literally, instead of radiation, chemo, and estrogen blocking pill, they're getting the estrogen blocking pill and one other pill by mouth, and they're able to get to a clean scan. Now, a clean scan doesn't mean when you're stage 4 that that cancer is not underlying. It probably is, but the point is they've gotten you from a stage 4 cancer to a scan that shows no visible cancer. And so when you change your lifestyle, as I did, and a lot of my cancer patients do, sometimes your own body can take care of any residual cancer that is left in your body because you're finally living so that your body works the way God created it to work in the first place. And God created our bodies to fight disease and to heal and to actually detect cancer and destroy it on an everyday basis. So when we get our body working as God intended, a stage 4 cancer, when they get you to a clean scan at a top-notch cancer center, sometimes you can take it from there and then you can eventually be cancer-free and stop treatments.
There will be some people watching who may not have the access to go to different centers or different places in the world. What do you think about insurance or critical health cover insurance to be like a safety net if they were diagnosed with something, to give them the funds and resources to be able to go to these centers which you're speaking about, and to be able to travel and go to different places and get those second opinions?
Well, in the United States, insurance
Yeah.
pays for a second opinion. Now, I don't know
Okay.
how it is in the UK, and Cancer Treatment Centers of America, my insurance paid for that. So I was
Okay.
not paying for this out of pocket, and they paid for my second opinion. Now, where you don't have a second opinion paid for by insurance, I still think it's important, if you have the choice to
Yeah.
find that person who's on the cutting edge, get that second opinion, even if you have to pay out of pocket. I would still say it's important because where it's paid for by your government, you're going to want to make use of all of that you can. In other words, let's say you pay for a second opinion on your own and you pay out of pocket, and that doctor says, I'm going to use this and this because this is what the latest research shows, or this is best for your body. You paid for that opinion. You can take that opinion back to your oncologist that the government pays for, and you can say, hey, would you be willing to use these treatments on me? Because this is what the latest research says. And so in America, in the United States, what a lot of people do is they go to where insurance pays for, because to go totally to fight cancer out of your own pocket can cost anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000, if not more, out of pocket, which would be maybe 60 to 120,000 in the UK. And so that is difficult for most people to do. So you use what you can from that local oncologist that it is designed for you to go to. And if you can convince them to use what this second opinion gave, then the government's paying for it, if that makes any sense. So
Yeah.
you try everything you can to let that insurance, that government insurance, pay for what they can pay for. They can pay for the scans. They can pay for so many things. And you can also do this. You can take what insurance pays for in the United States or in the UK, and you can add the integrative approach on your own. And this is kind of, yes, my hospital gave it to me. I added other things that my hospital didn't recommend. And my naturopathic doctor provided at the hospital. When she saw how well it worked for me and I told her what I was doing, she said, I'm going to look into this. And then she started recommending it to some of their patients. So you can go to an oncologist who's not integrative, and you can put the holistic therapies with it. You can do like exercise is a holistic therapy that costs you nothing. You can add that to your cancer journey. What you eat, what you drink, you can change that so it's more anti-cancer, and the foods you're eating are also, in addition to the chemotherapy, fighting the cancer from the inside out. You can work on your mindset, knowing that stress and fear and worry, when you live that way, the whole cancer journey, it only helps to drive the cancer. Instead, you can have a positive, spiritual, Christian mindset, like Paul was talking about. And so that is going to be key as well. So if all you can afford is what your insurance, government insurance pays for, you can work with that and add the steps in my book, the 8 steps, to that. And then if you get to any questions on whether you can do that during chemotherapy, ask your doctor, can I do this during chemotherapy? If they say, I'd rather you wait until it was over, then you can choose to wait and then implement that part. And when I'm talking about that part, I'm talking about the part where I talk about food and your diet, and one whole chapter is on supplements. If your doctor says, this chemotherapy might react and not be as effective if you take B vitamins, and this is what some of these chemotherapy agents, they have that as a caveat in the notes.
Yeah.
B vitamins can render this chemotherapy agent less effective. Then you would take your B vitamins after the chemotherapy is over. But the whole way I wrote the book was so that if you're going to a regular oncologist that doesn't have an integrative approach, sponsored by your government or your health insurance, you can put the integrative approach with it, which will increase your chances of survival and your chances of helping to beat the cancer and prevent it from coming back.
Okay, yeah. So I've taken from that is utilizing the resources that what we've got. So we could utilize, because there is a private healthcare in the UK. So we could possibly put in safety measures, sorting out insurance, that if something like this does arise, we can go to the NHS, but also we would be in a position where we have resources to be able to get a second opinion, also sort out nutrition to increase our chances of beating the cancer.
Right. So, Andre, those chemotherapy chemicals are very expensive. And if you can get your government insurance to pay for what's so expensive in the cancer journey, then that's the way to do it. Even if it might not be the same chemicals your original oncologist was going to use, this second opinion may know more and is saying, no, these chemicals are the best to use now according to new research. So if you can convince your oncologist to do that, whoever does it, the chemicals are the same. If they're going to follow the same treatment plan, they're the same. You go to that other doctor, they're not going to pay for it. So you're going to want to get it through the oncologist, where the government's going to pay for those expensive chemicals.
Okay.
And those expensive scans.
Yeah. 100%.
And all that blood work that they track you with. Let your oncologist, dictated by your insurance and your government insurance, pay for all of that.
Yeah. Okay, in terms of, you did mention about the blood work. So going a bit later on in your journey, you speak about the risk factors that you've learned about what can cause breast cancer, what can cause cancer. Also, you spoke about doing blood work and finding certain toxins.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Well, Andre, the doctors at the Cancer Treatment Centers of America sat down with me and they went over the 8 risks for the cancer I was diagnosed with. And
Yeah.
there were 8 risk factors. I did not have even one of them. I had 0
Okay.
of the risk factors. And so
Okay.
that really puzzled me. And frankly, it puzzled them. But they did tell me we're seeing more and more people who have, like you, who don't have any risk factors for the cancer that they have. And this is concerning to us. And so we immediately do genetic testing. So they did a blood test that it was very expensive. My insurance, thank goodness, paid for it. And it was a genetic test that really went to the nth degree to see if I had any genetic factors at all. When those test results came back, I was shocked. I knew it was going to say, oh, I must have some genetics for this cancer because I don't have the risk factors. It said 0. I had no genetic factors. So I'm looking at an aggressive cancer diagnosis, and I have no risk factors or no genetic factors. And Andre, that sent me on a quest to figure out, number 1, what caused my cancer? And number 2, what could I do to help the doctors to beat it, to get through the treatments, and to prevent it from coming back? And that's when I began to delve into the research. And I was praying, Lord, open doors here. Give me wisdom. Teach me what I need to learn. And some of the things that I learned, I was not expecting to learn. And had God not kind of pulled the curtain back for me, I wouldn't have discovered it on my own. And one of those things is clearly the amount of toxins that had accumulated in my body. And it kind of, I'm not going to say it happened by chance. It happened at the hand of God. Because after chemotherapy was over, I went back to my integrative doctor close to home that I had to partially pay out of pocket for. And I had already been dealing with her before the cancer journey with some high lead levels. And we were getting those down. And I wanted to see if my lead levels had improved during chemotherapy, had stayed the same, or had gotten worse. And when it was a urine test. When that urine test came back, and I went to her office to get the results, and she slid those results across the desk, and I looked at them. I just began sobbing because it was much worse. Not just the lead. The lead was the same. Now mercury was at high levels. Aluminum was at high levels. And I can only suspect that these are used with the chemotherapy so your body reacts to it or whatever, so they get a better result. But then all the chemotherapy agents and all these things, and now I look like a toxic metal dump. And she just looked at me and she said, you have so many toxins in your body now after chemotherapy. If we just leave them in and let them naturally come out, which they would over a certain number of years, but you're at high risk that this cancer can come back, and this is making you high risk that it comes back. We've got to get these toxins out. And she recommended that I look at joining a sauna club, an infrared sauna club, where you can join and go as many times in a week for a certain price. Well, there was no place near me that had a sauna, so that wasn't an option. So my husband and I invested in an infrared sauna that we put in our house that we would both make use of. Well, I would get in that sauna 3 times a week. And when the sauna arrived, some people in our Bible study helped my husband get it upstairs, unpack it, and put it together. And I got a call from the sauna company I bought it from, and they said, we're doing a clinical trial to see how well our sauna works against some toxic elements. Would you be willing to be in the clinical trial? And I was like, yes, because it would help me track the chemicals as they're coming out of my body, and I would know my progress without me having to pay for these additional tests. So I said, yes. So they did a test before I started the sauna. And I thought they were testing heavy metals, what my doctor had already tested. And I knew the first test needed to be done by them, and it was important. When the test results came back, and this is where the hand of God comes in, oh, they weren't testing heavy metals. I already knew what those levels were. The test results came back. They were testing through a urine test toxic chemicals in my body that I did not know could accumulate in my body. And when I got the list back, out of 20 that they tested, including glyphosate, I was high in 15 out of the 20.
Wow.
High means you're above the 75th percentile. You're in the red zone. And I began to look at what these chemicals were and research what they were. And they were things like glyphosate that I find out is an endocrine disrupting hormone. Now, from what I've heard in the UK and in most of Europe, they're not allowing this chemical that is used around the world, and especially in the United States on all of our crops. They're not allowing it. And I hope that is true in the UK as well. But I know in parts of Europe, they are not. They have banned glyphosate, and that is a good thing. But it was at high levels in my body. There were parabens and phthalates, which were at high levels in my body. They are also endocrine disrupting hormones, which means they mimic estrogen in the body and can help create estrogen dominance. And so, wow, I took it back.
So just to clarify, these toxins that were found in your body could contribute to an estrogen dominance, which could contribute to an estrogen-fed
It
cancer.
took me a while to
Like
realize that, but yes, I took it back to the cancer center. And when
Yeah.
they saw one of the chemicals was one of the chemicals used in Agent Orange. Agent Orange is a word known to many Americans because a lot of our veterans in the Vietnam War were exposed to Agent Orange, and it impacted their health. And so when my doctors saw that I had high of this chemical related to Agent Orange as well, they said, "Oh my goodness, we didn't know you were a Vietnam vet." I said, "I'm not. I've never been to Vietnam.
yeah.
I've never served in the military, but here I have." They said, "Your levels are as high as some of our Vietnam vets that we're treating for cancer." And so they're looking at all this, and finally my oncologist says, "I think we finally found not the only reason, but one of the reasons you got an estrogen, like you were saying, Andre, an estrogen-bed cancer. I didn't have the normal reasons you have estrogen dominance to get this cancer, but these chemicals, yes." And so this is what made me write the book. I'm like, so many people don't know that they're exposed to all these chemicals, that they're getting in through their skin, they're getting in through what we eat, what we drink, what we put on our skins. And I had to literally go into this research mode to figure out how these toxins were getting into my body and what I could do about it. And it turns out that what my doctor recommended was one of the best things I could do. Of course, exercise helps get toxins out because you sweat. Drinking lots of water, taking detox herbs. But I couldn't take detox herbs during chemotherapy, and certain herbs my naturopathic doctor told me I could not take when I was on the estrogen blocking pill because it would interfere with the estrogen blocking pill. And this is why having a naturopathic doctor on your case can be very helpful. So yes, this is when the 3 days a week of getting in that sauna began. And I'm proud to say that after it took me several years of hard work to get these chemical levels down in the green zone. They will never not be in my body at all because we live in a toxic world, Andre, and we just have to accept that. Here's the key. When the toxins in your body become so high that your bucket is full, then your body, your own immune system that God gave you gets caught up in all its energy goes towards dealing with these toxins instead of fighting cancer and disease. And so it's important to get the toxic load down. Those toxins are still going to be in my body, but now they're in the green zone. There's the green zone, there's the yellow zone of caution, and there's the red zone. And those that were in the red zone are now in the green zone. And I intend to keep it that way by the way that I live. In my book, I have several chapters, not only on detox, but how to avoid getting these toxins in your body in the first place. Some of them we cannot avoid because we live in a toxic world, but some of them we can avoid. by going from drinking out of plastic bottles, which contain BPA, and plastics are endocrine disrupting, to drinking out of a steel Yeti or some steel container or ceramic or glass, like our grandmothers did, So a lot of it is in how we live. And I actually went in my pantry in a rage with all the stuff I'd learned and found out that most of the foods in my pantry that I'd been feeding myself, my husband, and my family were loaded with chemicals, loaded with so many things, preservatives and dyes and all these things. And I just, I don't recommend that everyone do this, but I was, in the middle of fighting for my life. And I was like, no more of this. And I just cleaned out my pantry and started off over with things that were more natural, that didn't have all these chemicals, that weren't raised with chemicals in farming to begin with. You might be a little safer in the UK, because I have heard that in Europe, your cosmetics and things you put on your skin are heavily guarded by your government agencies, and they don't allow parabens and they don't allow phthalates and a lot of these things that were found in my body. So you might be a little more protected where you are than where we are. And a lot of the ways that you live over there, you would never think of asking for a styrofoam coffee cup to take a cup of coffee to go in Europe. They probably wouldn't have one. But here, people don't think anything about it. I don't drink from styrofoam anymore. Endocrine disrupting hormones, when heated, get into your body when you drink from the cup. So, I have several chapters on this, what I learned and how I can revamp my lifestyle so that my toxic load, and there's always going to be a little bit of a toxic load, is going to be negligible instead of in the red zone.
And then so with the toxic load that you said had increased through the chemotherapy and just having that treatment, starting from when you implemented the infrared sauna to get your levels down, just to clarify, did it take you 2-3 years for all your levels to go back into the green zone? So it was about 2-3 years of 3 times a week for it to
Yes.
get to that healthy level. Okay.
I did it 3 times a week, increased my water intake. I, walked 3 to 4 miles every day, did the sauna 3 times a week. It was like a little bit at a time. When I would do the sauna for several months, and then they would send me the test to do, and if I was 96th percentile, after 3 months, I might have come down to 94th percentile. It's like it was slow going. The sweat works the best, okay? And exercise and hydration, they all go together, but it wasn't an overnight thing. It did take a good 2 to 3 years to get it to that point. And, I don't know how long it would have taken had I not gotten the sauna and took an active approach to getting these toxins down. Because when you leave the chemotherapy lab, and you're finished with chemotherapy, and you ask, well, how long does it take for these chemicals to get out of my body? And frankly, they don't know. And some oncologists will tell you, oh, they'll be out in a few months or 6 months. That is absolutely not true. One thing I did notice, Andre, when I finished chemotherapy and my hair came back, I have naturally straight hair. My hair came back, you're going to laugh at this, an afro. It was curly cute. What was interesting was, as I did the sauna, the curl in my hair gradually came out. Now, I didn't like that, but it was showing me that the toxins were coming out of my body. That was another way I could see that the toxins were coming out of my body. That the curl was coming out of my body, because it was the chemicals that created the curl. Just like chemicals in a perm, when you get your hair permed, create the curl. As I sweated those chemicals out of my body, the curl came out with it. So, it takes a while, and I'm not going to tell anybody that it's not hard work. It is hard work. You really have to be conscientious. But the whole point, at that point, I was cancer-free, was to prevent my cancer from coming back, because I realized if I kept this high toxic load and didn't change my lifestyle and didn't try to get these toxins out, my cancer was already highly likely to come back because it was aggressive and treated with chemo. I realized it would reduce my risk of my cancer coming back, that this was something I had to do.
Okay. And with the test that you've done, is there a name?
It's called a toxic chemical profile. And the first test that my doctor did was the heavy metal profile. Both
Okay.
are urine tests. You can get those tests in the United States from Great Plains Labs. But in the UK, you would have to go probably to an integrative doctor out of pocket
Yeah.
to get these tests. I did have to pay for those tests out of pocket, but
Yeah.
they were
But
well
that's,
worth paying for,
yeah,
because I needed to
100%.
know
Yeah.
that information. And again,
Yeah.
this clinical trial was paying for all the other tests because they were following me, and that really benefited me as well.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. So that's really important for those who are taking the chemotherapy route. On the back end of it, investing into these tests so you know where you stand with the toxic overload, and implementing infrared sauna or something, which is a slow process, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. Like Mrs. Brant is now in the green
Yeah.
with all of her toxic levels.
Yeah, you have to be patient, but it's so worth it, because I live with peace of mind knowing that what I'm doing is helping to prevent the cancer from coming back. Once you're a cancer patient and you have stopped treatments, your biggest fear is this cancer going to come back? And instead of living in fear, what I do is I live with a changed lifestyle that makes me feel at peace. Yes, do I realize my cancer could still come back? Yes, but I'm lessening the risk that it will come back. I am improving my chances that it won't. And that's what helps me to sleep at night and not worry constantly.
As Mrs. Brant touches on her personal lifestyle choices in order to minimize the risk of a cancer recurrence, she goes on to speak about the importance of hydration and sleep.
Most people around the world today are dehydrated. I know they are in the United States. Why? Because we're drinking coffee all day. We're drinking soft drinks with high caffeine, and these things only dehydrate. Now, coffee can be actually good for you because it has a lot of antioxidants, but you don't want to be drinking coffee and caffeinated drinks all day long, because they cause more water to come out of you than actually comes in. So it's important that you learn how to properly hydrate. And that's why I have one whole chapter in my book about hydration, because it's key to preventing cancer in the first place. It's key to getting through the journey, and it's key to preventing it from coming back. Now, another thing people may not realize is that your body works most powerfully when you engage in deep sleep at night. That is when your body detoxes itself. That's when your body heals and repairs itself, because God created our bodies to heal and repair on an everyday basis. Probably one of the greatest lessons I learned in the cancer journey. So it's important that we make sleep a priority to prevent cancer again, to get through the journey, and to prevent it from coming back. My naturopathic doctor told me in the middle of the cancer journey, she said, Ginny, if you don't engage in deep sleep, your body's not going to be able to recover from what these treatments, the surgery, the chemotherapy, and all the things they were going to do to me, what this is going to do to your body. You must make sleep a priority. And that's when I learned how to make sleep a priority. So when you have long-term sleep deprivation, then it affects every organ in your system and the disease state in your system, and it opens the door for cancer. So again, sleep is a way to prevent, and sleep is how our body heals and repairs at night. And actually, when we sleep and engage in that deep sleep, there's a hormone called melatonin that God created that goes off in our body, and it actually helps to kill cancer cells. So melatonin is one of your greatest defenses against cancer on an everyday basis. And when people do, when people cut sleep short to be more successful and get more work done, it actually works against your own God-given healing in your body.
In this section, Mrs. Brant touches on the importance of community and the significance that it played in her personal healing journey.
It is important to have that. I would have to say my greatest support in the cancer journey was my husband and my family.
Okay.
I mean, I had a husband who prayed with me every day, who supported me every day, and went through the journey with me, flew to the appointments with me. And as I'm going through difficult things, I'm watching out of the corner of my eye, and he doesn't think I'm seeing this, but he's going in the closet and praying on his own, and I see tears coming from his face. It's hard for the spouse. And he was like I say, he was my greatest support, because after my body was disfigured, after I lost every hair on my body, it was my husband, when I would wake up in the morning and not want to look in the mirror, who would say to me, "Honey, you're still the most beautiful woman east of the Mississippi River." And we would both giggle, because I'm, as bad as I looked, I can only imagine what all those women look like if I look better, right? But he loved me unconditionally, even with all the changes. Not every cancer patient gets that, but every cancer patient needs that. I had the support of my children and their spouses, and that was important. But yes, it wasn't actually in my church. It was two friends who had my same cancer. We had served on a mission board together for the Baptist around the world, and we were very close. And both of them had had this same aggressive breast cancer before me. One was stage 4, one was stage 3. And they encouraged me to look carefully at the treatments that were being offered, because this cancer, about 10 years before I was diagnosed, was incurable. If you got this cancer, it was considered incurable. It was not until the immunotherapy, Herceptin, was invented that people started to be able to be cured of this cancer. So I had those women I could talk to at any time. And I never went to chemo without a friend or family member with me. My husband couldn't always go, because he was trying to hold down his job to pay the bills, and there was lots of bills coming in with a cancer journey. So he went as much as he could, but he couldn't always be with me. And sometimes a friend would fly with me for another surgery or the port to be put in, or they would go with me and sit with me through chemotherapy. My sister sat with me for one of my chemotherapies. My brother was with me after one of my surgeries, even though they didn't live in that same town. So it's spousal support, it's family support. I had friends from high school show up at the cancer center, and from college, that just happened to show up the day I was having chemo. They knew I was going to be there, and they sat with me. I didn't know they were going to be there. I thought I was going to be alone for the 8-hour ordeal. And this was amazing. I had a principal I worked with very closely from South Carolina, and he and his wife were going in a boat all through the Great Lakes. I didn't know this. And he was docked at a port 3 miles from my cancer hospital, and he saw me post the Chicago skyline on Facebook, and he said, "Hey, why don't you go out on the boat with us? We're here in Chicago too." And I said, "I can't. I have cancer." And when he heard that, he and his wife rented bikes from the port they were docked at, rented bikes, rode 3 miles, and stayed with me for chemotherapy that day. So, I was getting it from everywhere, and I was very fortunate to have that. But let me say this, Andre. Churches need to carefully look at those people in your congregation who have cancer, who are single moms, and they have no one to turn to, people who are widows. I've seen some people go through the cancer journey where the wife has cancer, or the husband, and then while they're in the journey, the other spouse gets cancer. These people need real support from their church. And I think it's great when these churches do these cancer support groups. I did not have one at my church. I have spoken at a lot of cancer support groups by Zoom, from churches in Chicago to churches in different parts of the country. I think these cancer support groups where people can come and lay their fears out and receive encouragement from other people are important. I did not have the benefit of that, but I certainly had plenty of support from my family and from my friends.
Wow, that's wonderful to hear of all the family support, support from your husband. And there was a quote actually from your book when you were feeling frustrated that the doctors hadn't found the cancer sooner. And your husband said, God gives us what we can handle. It may have been too much for you to handle during your mother's cancer. When I read that, it really struck a chord with me, how through what we might perceive as human error, whatever it is, that God's loving hand is in there protecting our hearts and minds and us watching over things. And that perspective, where he spoke to you, I'm sure it'll be an encouragement to other people who are watching and just going through things and the frustrations, the fears, the questions, the doubts, that despite whatever you may face, it says that God works through all things for the good of those who love him and have been called according to his purpose. So,
Amen. And I have to look back on what you said there, Andre. I think it is true. And what my husband said there is true. Had I been diagnosed during my mother's cancer journey, as my sister mainly and I were taking care of her, it would have been overwhelming to my mother, to me. So it probably was best that I had a little bit of time to breathe in between before I got that cancer diagnosis. And the good thing was that my surgeon was able to clear the margins and not do the more extensive surgery where they go into your lymph nodes and all these things. So it probably was a blessing, but 3 mammograms missed my cancer. 3, Andre.
Wow. Yeah.
So that was discouraging to me, that since 40, I had done exactly what the doctor said to do, got my mammogram every year, and it did me absolutely no good. I found this cancer accidentally, Andre, when I did the Cooper River Bridge run with my husband. That's a 10-kilometer run that we do every year that we walk briskly. We, at that time, we're only running part of it. And it was in the middle of the night when this ring got caught in my nightie, and it woke me up because I was trying to free it. And that's when I felt the lump. And I was like, and this was during, it was just, 4 months after my mother had died from breast cancer. So had I not found the lump, it would have been my next appointment 9 months away. A mammogram had missed it 3 months earlier. My doctor, feeling it, had missed it. And I don't know that, I think it was because it was aggressive and she probably couldn't feel it at that time. But that mammogram should have picked it up. But some women like me have dense breast, meaning a lot of dense tissue, and dense breasts show up white on a mammogram. And so does the cancer, making it hard to detect. So another thing you learn in the breast cancer journey is that mammograms aren't very efficient on some people, and I'm one of those people. My oncologist doesn't really trust the mammograms on me. They've gone to 3D, which is better, but still doesn't trust the mammograms. And so what I do is I get a thermogram I pay out of pocket for once a year, and then I get an ultrasound that I pay out of pocket for through a remote lab that travels the country. And so when you do a mammogram and they find something suspicious, they go to the ultrasound. So it just kind of skips the mammogram and just goes right to the ultrasound. In order to do it, I have to pay out of pocket, but it is worth the peace of mind to me because they have told me with aggressive cancer treated by chemo, if it comes back with a vengeance. It's going to move very quickly. And if I don't catch it quick, it'll quickly be all over my body. So knowing that, I have a plan of action where I'm checked by my oncologist every year. And then 4 months later, I get a thermogram, which is done with heat in infrared light, and it doesn't have any chemicals or radiation. And then the ultrasound does not either. So between the 3 different checkings, we're trying to stay on top of it should the cancer come back.
Okay. So you mentioned cancer patients can reach out to you and get some guidance. How does this work? Did they have to contact you through your website? Sorry.
Yes.
How would
I
they?
have a website at www.ginnybrant.com. BRANT.com. And one of the last tabs is a contact page. And on that contact page, it shows how you can click to make an appointment with me online. And so I do work with patients all over the world, from South Africa to Australia, several in the UK, and all over the United States. And, you know, just to try to give them some insight about their own situation so that they can, you know, fare better. I'm not taking the place of their oncologist.
Yeah.
What I'm doing is helping them with lifestyle changes and what we call their part. Your doctor has their part to do in your cancer journey, but you also have a role to play. And what I try to help them to do is to play that role so that their chances of survival and a good prognosis increase. No doctor can guarantee you 100%. I cannot guarantee you 100%. Your doctor's role is to, you know, improve your prognosis and hopefully cure your cancer. My role is to help you change your lifestyle so that you're assisting your doctor, you're complementing what your doctor's doing, and you're making your chances better that that cancer will not return.
100%. Thank you, Mrs. Brant, for sharing your story. You've mentioned about your website where people can visit. Could you also speak about how people can buy your book?
Yes, you can go to my website. My book is on Amazon, which is probably the best
Amazon.
way for someone in the UK, especially to download the book as an ebook. But I'm also, like you, on YouTube. 3 months ago, I started a YouTube channel, and I just did one of my most popular videos is my how to make my chocolate banana blueberry smoothie, which is gut building for the cancer journey and preventing it from coming back. It's cancer fighting. It's good for your immune system. It just hits so many important health areas. And the other one is one I did on plastics, how plastics are getting into our system and accumulating in our body. And so I encourage you to go to my YouTube channel. It's simply at Ginny Brant, GINNY BRANT. And on my website, I also have a blog that you can sign up for that keeps you informed as I post on my blog once a week. I post on YouTube twice a week.
One of the possible side effects of taking a radiation or chemotherapy medication is a loss in bone density, which is known as osteoporosis. Mrs. Brant speaks about this in her book, and here she goes on to explain the importance of exercise during the treatment process as a way to counteract this. She found that certain exercises can offset this side effect by building bone density.
But what I did with exercise, I used it to relieve stress. And then at the end of the journey, my doctors told me when the new research came out in Australia and at MD Anderson, that exercise is the best thing a cancer patient can do during treatments. No one knew that at the time. I was doing it to relieve stress. And while I'm doing it to relieve stress, I'm getting all these bonuses I didn't realize. And then my doctors clearly said, this is why you did so well. I was snow skiing, doing the Cooper River Bridge run, walking it, doing all these things during chemotherapy. And it was the best thing I could have done. You do what you can when you can, but yes, exercise is powerful.
Yeah. Oh, so that's another major takeaway. Yeah. Keeping exercising throughout even the treatment, keeping active, walking, and doing what you can. But yeah, so thank you for that. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre, and thank you for your interest in this field. I know that it's fueled by your love for your, as you call her, your mom.
Yeah. Okay.